Chapter 3 Secrets Inside. Jackson told everybody all about it the next day. Watch out for Mike, he warned the other people on the lunch line at school. Everything he touches falls apart. He did a little demonstration of the way Mike's new toy broke the minute he touched it. Can you trust him with a tray? Jackson asked the cafeteria ladies. Some kids laughed, but Mike wanted to disappear. I'm skipping recess, he told his friend Charlie. After lunch, he walked back to Mrs. Canfield's room. Everything okay, she said. Just looking for some peace and quiet, Mike mumbled. It was Nora's day to come to Mike's after school, and the rules were a little different at his house. The main thing was to stay out of his parents' way because they were always on their computers. Once they did their homework, the kids could even watch a movie if they wanted to. The thing was, Mike didn't want to. For once, he finished his homework sheets in one sitting. He really wanted to go back to the White Rabbit. To get more teeth? Nora asked. Really? You think another set will be any better? Mike just wanted to get something new, something to shut Jackson up. A whoopee cushion would be good, he thought. It'll be fun, he said, trying to convince Nora. His mom had her doubts, too. A joke shop that sells antiques, she said. I've never even heard of this place, but okay, I guess we can go. When they got there, Mrs. Weiss peered at the displays in the front window. There was a black top hat faded by the sun and a stuffed bunny that was looking pretty gray. You're sure this is right? She asked. Looks like it's out of business. This is it, Mike said. The Believe mat was just inside the door. I have an idea, said Mrs. Weiss. See that coffee shop across the street? I'm going to take that empty window seat and wait for you there. I can keep an eye on you and also start grading some exams. That was one good thing about spending afternoons with Nora, Mike thought. Kids like her got extra privileges. His mom would never have allowed this if he were alone. The man with the wild hair was right at the front desk. Today his shirt was midnight blue with a row of half-moons on the front pocket. Need more chattering teeth, he asked, like he was reading Mike's mind. Yeah, they broke already, Mike said, surprised. How did you know? Lucky guess, said the man, holding out his hand. Joe Zerlin. Good to see you again. Mr. Zerlin began polishing a mirror, so Mike and Nora got a chance to wander around the store. Mike wondered where all these old things came from, like the towering grandfather clock still ticking away or the big trunk with the padlock on it. The musty smell of the store reminded him of his grandma's house or a museum where a loud sound might shatter something valuable. After a while, Mike went back to the shelf of joke stuff. He was looking at some plastic puke when Nora said from a corner full of old books, Did you hear that? She followed the sound around a corner and into a short hallway. Come here, she whispered. There was another room off the hallway, one they hadn't noticed before. It sounded like a pigeon was trapped in there. Above its half-open door there was a banner that said, Secrets Inside. Nora looked at Mike. If there were really secrets, wouldn't the door be locked? It sounded like she wanted to go in, but kids like Nora never broke the rules. What did Mike have to lose? He was always in trouble anyway. That banner, it's practically an invitation, he said. Pushing the door open, he and Nora walked in together. What they found first wasn't a secret exactly, it was more like a major surprise. In the room there was a giant cage of white doves. They were cooing and pecking at their food. It was pretty strange to find live animals in the back of an antique store, but Mike didn't think about that at first. The room was crammed with so many other amazing things. There was a huge trunk overflowing with colored silks. There were stacks of cards, buckets of coins, bags of feathers, boxes of every size with tiny compartments hidden inside, a row of magic 8-balls, a selection of stilts and wands, a pile of crazy wigs. Mike walked from one end of the room to another, his eyes wide and his mouth hanging open. A dusty tuxedo sat in the corner, a rubber hand dangling from its arm. A jar of eyeballs stared at Mike. He really hoped they weren't real. There was a witch's broom hanging from the ceiling and a cone-shaped hat like a wizard would wear, sitting on a puppet's head. There was even a silver unicycle in the middle of everything. Part of Mike expected it to start zipping around without a rider. While he stood there dumbly, Nora answered the question he hadn't even asked yet. The trunks and mirrors, she said. The doves, the hat, and the rabbit, the name of the store for Pete's sake. I can't believe we didn't see it before. It's got to be a magic shop. And Mike had thought a joke shop was cool. He still remembered the time his friend Zach had a magician at his birthday party. Mike sat right next to him so he could watch what he was doing. No matter how carefully he watched, though, he couldn't figure out how the guy had made things disappear, or how he had gotten flowers to bloom from the end of his wand. Maybe this was Mike's chance to find out. He and Nora found Mr. Zerlin near the front of the store. Now we get it, Mike said. Everything here is for a magician's act, right? I sell treasures and tricks, said Mr. Zerlin mysteriously. Well, could you show us one? Mike asked. Mr. Zerlin's face lit up with a smile as bright as the chattering teeth. He took a box of cards out of his pocket. Regular cards, he said, handing them to Mike. Here, take a look. They looked pretty normal to Mike. They felt normal when he shuffled them, too. Mr. Zerlin took the deck and fanned out the cards face up with a flourish. Suddenly, he was more than a shopkeeper. He was a performer. They're in no particular order, right? He asked. Mike and Nora both nodded. Mr. Zerlin split the deck and placed the two halves side by side on the table. He took a card from one half and put it on top of the other. Then he pointed to the next card in the deck and instructed the kids, take a look at that one, but don't show me. Just remember what it is. Nora took the card and guarded it as carefully as a paper in school. Only Mike could see. The 3 of spades. Now put it back anywhere in the deck and shuffle all the cards together, Mr. Zerlin told her. Nora hid it in the middle of the deck. She shuffled the cards 4 times before she handed them back. Mr. Zerlin fanned the cards out, just as he had before. Let's see if I can find it. He paused at the Jack of Diamonds. Not this one, he mused, rubbing his chin. At the 3 of Hearts, he said, not this one either. Then he moved ahead until he came to rest at the 3 of Spades. Mr. Zerlin tapped it confidently. This is the one, he said. Am I right? No way, said Nora, shocked. I mean, yes, that's my card, but how did you do that? Mike imagined what it would be like to do something that nobody else knew how to do. He'd be a much cooler kid if he had a few tricks up his sleeve. Wish I could do that, Mike blurted out. Maybe you could, and maybe you couldn't, Mr. Zerlin replied. What do you mean, Nora asked. Can't you teach us? I can teach a magician, said Mr. Zerlin, as if that made things any clearer. But not anyone can learn, right? Nora pressed him. It's not like we need magic powers or anything. Maybe you do, and maybe you don't, said Mr. Zerlin. Mike had wondered about that, too, back at Zach's party. He had waited for the magician to slip and reveal his secrets, but his sleeves had been rolled up. There was nothing in his hands. He wasn't hiding anything as far as Mike could tell. So how was he doing what he did? Mike never figured it out. He knew the magician couldn't really be magic, yet there was no other way to explain his tricks. Mike was used to not understanding things, but he could tell it was bothering Nora. Well, how do you know if someone can do magic, said Nora. Is there a kind of test or something? Is there some kind of test or something? Mike rolled his eyes. If there was a test, he knew Nora would get a perfect score. That's for me to know and you to find out, said Mr. Zerlin. Even Mike was starting to wish that Mr. Zerlin would just give them a straight answer. Then for a moment he dropped his mysterious manner. Tell you what, said Mr. Zerlin. I'll teach you a trick if you answer my riddle.